All right, folks, we are now live on HHTV. You may begin.
Great. Thank you, Risa. Well, good morning and welcome to Fireside Chat. And we are so sorry that we have this COVID outbreak that forces us to be on Zoom, but we are glad we are able to do it on Zoom. Lori's going to be giving some updates on COVID, and we are certainly hoping we are going to get past this in a hurry and back to some normal operations. And we know how hard this is on everybody. And we also want to keep the community safe. So stay tuned here for a little bit more from Lori. If you have questions, please email them to Beth, and that way we'll circle back around at the end and address those questions. And then, as usual, we got a full deck of things to cover today. And I wanted to begin with just talking a little bit about the resident board meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, I had to duck out early for I got a text kind of in the middle of that meeting that my brother-in-law's wife was in her final decline with pancreatic cancer. So I had to duck out. And unfortunately, I left Mike Meekum in the lurch to try to answer all the questions that normally I would try to step in. And, he got some good, tough questions, and that's fine. It's all good. I don't know that it was, it would have been more helpful, I think, if I could have been there to help do it, but I wasn't. We learned a couple of things there. And one is that the resident board meeting had two components to it. One, just the regular meeting we have each year, and the other being the West Wing announcement, and or West Tower announcement. And we should have prepped people to understand what we were going to say or not cover in detail about the West Tower. It wasn't the place to go into the detail. There's a ton of information and communication that we will need to be sharing with residents over the course of the next many years. And that wasn't a place in which we could sufficiently capture things. So we should have said that because that wasn't the intent of the meeting, to get into detail. And as you can see, we have since planned to go forward with both a Methuen presentation, which we've had to cancel, and we're going to reschedule because of COVID. And then we're going to get into more details with West Wing residents starting on March 22nd. And then we will begin to lay out kind of a transition game plan for residents and get feedback from West Wing folks before then we share with the broader community so that everybody understands how we're going to approach this. We had a long finance committee meeting yesterday talking about this, and we all agreed we want to do everything to be as clear and transparent as possible. And we also want to be just generally as communicative as possible. And the overriding approach here is to be just and fair in how we go about providing the moves for people in the West Wing. We know this is a traumatic experience, and we want to do our very best. We're unlikely to be perfect. We've never had that record, nor has anyone else, but we will do our very best. The other part of the meeting that I wanted to make a comment on was that that a lot of people felt that there were just too much time spent on the biographies of some of the trustees. And that's fine. We at one point in our past, that is what residents wanted to hear. They wanted the personal connections with the trustees. So we went down that path. What became apparent to me in this is that we've now evolved past that, that the audience of residents today want a very different meeting. And guess what? We can do that. I had conversations with Deanna and the Residents Council leaders about how can we restructure that board meeting to have it be more meaningful for residents. We don't need to go down the path of excessive comments or whatever about the individual lives of board of trustee members. If there's other things that are helpful, then let's do that. We want it to be meaningful. So we will be working on that. I've since had a conversation with Mike Meekum, and he agrees. We're all prepared to make it a different meeting and a more meaningful meeting for residents in the future, and that's what we intend to do. As a total aside, that I think, I say this often because I think sometimes living in our community, we take a lot of things for granted. In the CEO search process, there were some names that came up, and one was from a local community that you would be familiar with, but I won't name, where one of the key leaders was asked to leave the organization because they were spending too much time trying to work with residents and get to know residents. That their whole policy was to keep them at arm's distance and kind of keep them in the dark, and this person was kind of violating it. How true that was, not entirely certain, but that's what came back to us. The point is, we do want to engage with residents. We do want to tackle the tougher issues, and we want to have mutual fairness in that process. So hopefully that is what you will experience and what you will perceive in our process, and we will try to work out whatever complexities and challenges we face. But that's our commitment. And I think we have a good reputation for doing that, even though it may not always feel that way because some of this stuff is just plain hard and it doesn't feel that good. But that's our pledge. Okay, on with the next thing is our new introductions. So Lorena is going to, our HR coordinator is going to walk us through some new people who've joined Horizon House, and let's welcome them when we see them because they're the ones who are key to making the experience here a really positive one.
All right, well, I couldn't have said it better. Yes, as you see these new employees, make sure that you do say hello and welcome them to the Horizon House community. So in Lorena's absence, I'm Sierra, the HR manager here, and I will be introducing those new employees. So the first one that we have is Na. She is a new diet aide with our Morrison Dining Services team. Then we have Christine. She is our on-call RN in the assisted living area. As well as, certainly last but not least, Robert. He is a full-time security guard. Again, you may see him walking around with the rest of the security team. So again, make sure you say hello as you see those new employees. Also, just wanted to quickly mention about pre-diversity week. So we had to change the structure of our normal diversity week due to COVID restrictions and things like that. So just wanted to send out a quick reminder. You should start seeing some flyers around the community, but we will have the food trucks next week. One food truck on Tuesday, February 28th, which is Soul Bowl. It's a Korean barbecue. And that is free for the employees only on that day. Residents are also encouraged to participate. And then on Friday, we have the Tuk Tuk Mobile Feast food truck, and that is Thai food, and that would be free for residents and employees. So I encourage you all to come out. The food trucks will be just like they were last time on the Terry Avenue side of the building. And so with that being said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Valerie to introduce new residents.
Thanks, Sierra. Thanks for all the work on next week.
No problem.
Looking forward to it. It is my pleasure to introduce a couple of our newest residents, Sue and Jerry Haas. Sue was born in Irwin, Ohio. She earned a BS in food and nutrition from Ohio State University and completed an internship for hospital dietetics. Sue worked as a dietitian and has a long history of volunteer and board service, including PTSA officer and parent newsletter editor, for which she was a two-time recipient of the Golden Acorn Award, co-chair of the Mount Baker Community Food Co-op, the Plymouth Church Council, and many community committees, including Parish Care, the Nominating Committee, Habitat Task Force, Mary's Place, and PHC, and was a Plymouth Church Parish visitor for 15 years. She is a member of Plymouth Church, Women's University Club, and Historic Seattle. Her interests include music, theater, reading, sewing, cooking, history, world events, genealogy, and travel. Jerry was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He earned his BS and MS in engineering from the University of Michigan and was an aerospace engineer at Boeing. As a longstanding member of Habitat for Humanity, he has worked on many international builds and was named the Seattle King County Volunteer of the Year in 2017. Jerry enjoys do-it-yourself projects, puzzles, skiing, hiking, rowing, and sailing. Together, Sue and Jerry were involved in cycle touring, including trips not only throughout Washington State, but in Central America, Europe, and Southeast Asia. Welcome to Horizon House, Sue and Jerry. And Diane Calkins. Diane was born and raised in California. She earned degrees in both chemistry and pharmacy and worked as a research chemist and as a licensed pharmacist at Virginia Mason for many years, where she learned about Horizon House. Diane belongs to Friends of Native Arts, Seattle Art Museum, and Seattle Opera. She's interested in art, music, travel, and science. Welcome to Horizon House, Diane. And next up, the COVID updates that Mike mentioned from Lori.
Good morning. Good to see all of you. Well, I wish I could see all of you actually. Okay, so for those of you who participated in the resident council meeting on Tuesday, a lot of this will be a repeat of that information, but I think re-education is always helpful, especially at a time like this. I do want to start with updating you on the case count, and this will be an update from Tuesday's report. And I believe there may have been more information posted in yesterday's case count chart on the HH Connect. But what I have as of this morning is for assisted living residents. We have a total of 7 cases with a couple of new ones since I reported in on Tuesday. For independent living residents, I'm so sorry to say that more cases are coming in. I have had a few more this morning. I owe some of you some phone calls back after the fireside chat to talk through some next steps for you. But we do have now a total of 45 independent living resident cases that are active. For independent living staff members, we have 1 staff member, and in assisted living, 2 staff members. So we are remaining quite low on staff cases. This is definitely an area that is impacting greatly our residents. I want to just recap that what I am seeing and the process that I have been following throughout the pandemic, and I've shared some of this, much of this in the past. What happens is when we have an identified positive case, as we've been messaging, I want you to please reach out to me so that I can talk through when your onset of symptoms were. And from there, we can talk about contact tracing, who you may have had a close contact with for exposure notifications. So as a contact tracer, I do reach out to individuals within the community who may have had an exposure based on what I learned from infected residents of their activities and where they have been in their infectious window. And as a contact tracer, I am not permitted to disclose the name of the infected individual. I've had a couple of residents who say, I want you to say it's me, and so I will not disclose unless there is consent. And whether you choose to self-disclose, that is up to you. But as a contact tracer, I am not permitted to. I contact those who have had exposures, talk through the CDC recommendations following exposure for testing and masking. And then part of my work with infected individuals is to also set the isolation window. And we follow the CDC guidance. So I talk through with each individual what that guidance involves. It's a minimum of 5 days of isolation. Oftentimes it is longer. And so following the 5 days, I am checking back in with infected individuals, get a review of symptoms, talk about retesting and when isolation can end. The isolation accommodations that we have put into place throughout this pandemic includes waiving meal delivery fees, providing garbage pickup outside of the apartment, delivering packages, deliveries, any kind of deliveries to the door, providing laundry assistance for those without laundry facilities, especially if isolation needs to be extended. All of these supports are in place to really help accommodate the isolation, because we want residents remaining in isolation so we can prevent this transmission. Through the contact tracing efforts, what I have seen as clear patterns is many of you who are positive or have recently been positive are displaying colds. That's a real big trend right now. I finally heard back from King County Public Health this morning, and they did share that they are seeing this very commonly right now. This strain is coming on as a head cold for most individuals. And because people are testing negative, they feel it's just a cold, and therefore have continued participating in activities, shared meals, cocktail parties, and transmitting, and not testing positive until day 3 into an active cold. I have a couple of residents who did not test positive until almost a week after cold symptoms, and King County confirmed that they are seeing more of that phenomena right now with this strain. So King County indicated that for all of the residents who may be displaying cold symptoms, but if you are continuing to test negative, to please isolate, because you may end up converting to positive up to a week later. So if you are having cold symptoms, again, also reach out to me. We can talk about accommodations. I'll be keeping in touch with you in terms of testing in the event you do convert to positive. So I think that is the real cause of the intra-community transmission. In working with those who have been exposed, those who have then converted into positive later on, usually within the first 5 days of exposure, has been the pattern. The link I'm seeing is predominantly exposures in activities where masks were off. And that is clearly the link, not in all cases, but a majority of the exposures converting to positives, tracing back to the activities have been largely over meals, gatherings in apartments where there was a disclosure that masks were off, which has been a normal practice for many. So there was an article, some of you forwarded the New York article, the large study that had been done on masks not being effective. I have communicated back to several of you who sent that information forward, that there are studies that have been done that speak to both sides of the mask issue, in terms of studies showing they are effective, studies showing masks are not effective. And then typically there are articles that follow, as was the case after the New York article, negating the efficacy of the study because of flaws and whatnot. So there's a lot more work that would have to be done to, I think, convince many of us that masks are not effective. I truly believe, just in the contact tracing, that masks do play an important role and an essential role in helping to slow down the transmission and to protect ourselves. So I am going to preach masking until there is something more widespread, and until the governing bodies were responsible as providers to responding to CDC, King County Public Health, and Department of Health. All of them are very clear about mask mandates at the right time, so we will continue following that advice. The other thing I want to just reiterate again, please, please, please order more test kits before the public health emergency sunsets in May. I really want to encourage you to do so. If you know of neighbors who don't have computers, please help them out by ordering test kits. We have posted the links we did last week in the communication. It is on HH Connect. Help each other out, order from the state as well as the federal programs. We want to get as many test kits in as we can so that we have donated supply for those who have been unable to acquire test kits for whatever reason. Thank you. Thank you to those of you who have dropped off. I have been using them. I have been testing a number of independent living residents myself and helping to support our nurses because we are running hard. We also have Erica Campbell engaged to help with testing. So for those who have vision problems, may have some cognitive challenges, or are not confident and what you're doing is correct per the instructions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can help if you need that help. We are committed to doing so. In terms of test kits and expiration dates, we reposted that link again last week in the COVID communication. It is on HH Connect. All of the test kits have been extended, some as much as a year, others by a few months. So please go on the link and check that out. If you select the link and open that, all you need to do is scroll down. It's not very intuitive, in my opinion. Once you open the link, you're going to see a lot of other links. Just continue scrolling down on that first page you open, and you will start to see very quickly multiple different test kit types. And then you can look and drill down within the particular type of test kit that you have to see what the extended expiration dates are. What I've been doing is taking a Sharpie and marking on the front what the revised expiration date is. I encourage all of you to do that. Let's not waste any that we don't have to. Final comment I want to make, there were some concerns that came up at the resident council meeting a month ago with regards to 911 calls and response time. I have not been successful in reaching 911 directly. I have left messages, emails, have not gotten calls back. However, I did get a little information yesterday. I happened to do 2 checks on a couple of residents I'm very concerned about with COVID. And I ended up calling 911 for 2 residents yesterday. Both did go out. I know that I've been asked the question. I can tell you that of all of the cases, we have had 4 residents go out to the hospital with COVID-related issues. I did take the opportunity to ask one of the EMT service representatives who came yesterday and asked for an opinion because I haven't heard back from King County Medical Services. He shared that they are having some short-staffed experiences right now, as is everywhere. He said by far the largest issue why there may be delayed response times to 911 calls is because the hospital ERs are so full, they can't take any more patients. And that is largely a product of 2 things. One, short-staffed, as well as there are occasions where the ERs just, for whatever reason, have an influx of patients at one time. And depending on the staffing situation, that will foster how many patients they can take in. So EMT said it's very difficult to predict at any given time if an ER is at full capacity. I will tell you that for the 2 calls I made yesterday, 911 was here within 2, 3, 4 minutes at the most. So my strong recommendation is if you feel you have a true emergency, call 911. Do not deviate from that practice. Call 911 and hopefully they can respond quickly. I know that most of the time they do. If there is a response time wait, it is likely because the ERs are full. I wish I had better news than that, and I wish there was some predictability with that. But I do want you to follow that process, and we also have the nurse as a backup as well. That is all I have at this time. I just want to reiterate that we did shift capacity in the elevators. We have expanded that a little bit. We recognize the frustration, appreciate the patience. We were very thoughtful at the task force about these mitigation strategies. And the elevator capacity, we made that decision because of the fact that this strain is so transmissible. And we know that not everyone always properly wears their mask. You know, one cough, one sneeze, the mask is not on properly. It's enough to create a contamination. So we did increase capacity in a safe way, and we will certainly reevaluate each week, but March 6th at the soonest. And if we are continuing to realize cases as we are, we may have to extend these restrictions. My hope is, I can tell you that from a couple of cases I spoke to this morning, based on their infectious window, they really didn't have any close contacts because we have put the restrictions in place. So that's the goal, is these new cases coming up, or hopefully from exposures before we put the restrictions in place. Any new ones will have far fewer close contacts, if any, because of the restrictions in place. That's the goal with the restrictions, is to shut down the transmission. So keep calling me if you are positive. I know we're going into the weekend. Please call reception. If you are confirmed positive, they know how to reach me. I will be in touch with you over the weekend. And I am plugged into emails at all times. So email is another option as well. We will get through this. We will persevere. We have some time here to get through this. We will arrive to a better place. It's going to take some patience. Again, it's going to take critical behaviors on all of our parts to shut this transmission down. But please be assured, we have brighter days ahead and we will get there. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'm thrilled to turn it over to something better for you. Andrew, please take it away.
All right. Well, yes, better news. Before I get into the Wellness Center updates, I just want to give a quick shout out and applause to Lori. I know that she's been working her tail off and trying to usher us through this outbreak. So if you see her, give her a smile under your mask, of course. But yeah, we'll make it. All right. So going to the Wellness Center updates, just a couple. First off, I wanted to re-talk about the open house we had for the Beam Center. I just want to give a quick recap of it. So in all, we had over 100 signups for one-on-one consultations, and we finally made it through every single one of those. So great. Along with that, I hope you guys, whoever was able to come, saw and met with some of our master occupational therapy students who are going to continue to work closely with us as we continue to push the Beam Center forward. Many in-person tutorials were done with all the new machines. Along with that, we have recorded a tutorial video and we'll be putting it out to the YouTube and HH Connect for our balance machine, the Senso. So you can give that a look if you haven't gotten a tutorial with it yet. With that being said, if you want to get an in-person tutorial, we're more than happy to do it. It doesn't even have to be on that machine. It can be any machine. If you just want a consultation in general and you didn't sign up for one while at the Beam Center open house, or you couldn't come to the Beam Center open house, just come on down. You can give me a call at the extension down below. Whatever works best for you, we're more than happy to work with you guys moving forward. Along with that, I wanted to show some of the new pieces of equipment. So you've probably seen these pictures, or at least seen these equipment in person. The two on the left and right, the Kaiser and of course the Senso balancing machine, were the ones we really showed at the open house. The one in the middle, that new one, is our new parallel bars. So a little bit more high tech than our older ones. The arms on each side hydraulically can raise up and down, which makes it very simple for the user. Along with that, it's 12 feet, so it's 2 extra feet on each side. And then also we have a bunch of attachments, so you can put like fake grass, little obstacles on it, so you can make it more real life like. Not pictured in here because we just got it up this week is our new stairs. They're practice stairs. There's 2 steps on one side and then 1 big step on the other side that we will start using for one-on-one training and maybe even classes. I think that it's a great tool to really practice, again, being outside in the environment and something that you would come across in daily life, especially with those 2 different types of stair heights. Moving on to the next thing, some of our upcoming events. So the first one is our biannual fitness assessments, and I'll get into that a little bit later. We have some new classes that we will be adding. Of course, we're going to continue to add new equipment as we keep pushing this Beam Center forward. And then, like I kind of mentioned earlier, if you want any consultation or anything, we're going to keep doing that. So looking more at the fitness assessments, if we can, thank you. Fitness assessments. So we're going to do them 2 times a year. What exactly are they? So they're what we call a senior fit test. Senior fit test, it tests lower body strength, upper body strength, lower body flexibility, upper body flexibility, balance and coordination, and then endurance. So it's kind of a very large general fitness assessment to really see where you are at specifically in your fitness. It's a great way to track your progress as well. If you do it at the start of the year and then at the end of the year, you can see, is there any deviations? Why did I have those? And so it really helps to provide insight into if you do have anything going on that you should work on, being at balance, maybe your lower body's not very strong, maybe your upper body's not very strong. So we'll use all that data we get to help push forward for like helping you with classes, or maybe helping you with different personal training that would be best for you specifically. Right now, the dates for that are March 30 and 31st, and then again, September 28th and 29th. So something super, super exciting to come. I hope you guys come to it. I'll have some refreshments and some cookies for after, prize for after. But yeah, I'm really excited to help get this going and help really push our community with this data to help give you guys what you need the most out of the Wellness Center. So moving on to some new classes. Deborah just got certified and will start teaching a meditation class in March. Basically next week, well, 2 weeks from now, hopefully, fingers crossed. Brian is going to continue to start and do what he calls his Art Talk Brain Fit. So if you've done his Brain Fit class before, it's going to be similar, but now he's going to focus it a little bit more on the Art Talk. Along with that, if you've been going to the walking class with Deborah and Erica, we're going to cancel that for a little bit. We're going to kind of reimagine it and see kind of what we can do. I don't think there's a lot of people that really want to walk out in the cold right now anyways. So we'll look at bringing that one back in spring, maybe late spring. Deborah's going to start another round of her very popular Bold and Strong. That should start in about 2 weeks as well, hopefully. She still has 3 open slots. So 3 open slots. If you're someone who wants to, you can contact me, contact Deborah, and we can get you on the list for that class. And again, that's going to start in about 2 weeks. And then finally, for a new class, I added a Wednesday aqua aerobics. I know that you guys have had it in the past and something that you've been begging to bring back. So I'm going to bring it back. I will be making a fool of myself dancing. So if you guys just want to come for a comedy show and maybe a little exercise, you're more than welcome to. Along with that Wednesday class, that will be from 9 to 9:45 once we can start doing classes again. We have a new pool sign-up schedule. Again, that will go out once we can lift some of these restrictions. The new pool sign-up sheet is very similar to what it used to be, with still 30-minute slots, but after 3 o'clock, it's just open swim. Open swims means anybody can show up and swim. But again, with that being said, until we lift these restrictions, it's all sign-up based. So 30-minute slots for this week, next week, and maybe going forward. So just come down, sign up for your 30-minute slot. You can sign up for 2 a day. And we'll keep that going until we can change it. Other than that, I think that's all I have for you guys. Again, if you have any questions for the fitness center, the wellness center, and especially with bringing this new fitness assessments, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we'll keep pushing this Beam Center going and helping you guys out. I think I am giving it to Joan next.
Good morning, everyone. Risa, am I on a large screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. At the Fireside Chat back in October, I announced that we were working on creating a new HH Connect. For many months now, Emily Wallace and I have been diligently working on a site that will serve you better. One that is visually appealing, has a better organizational structure, and provides helpful additional content. 2 weeks ago, Emily and I presented a first look at the new HH Connect to the Resident Council Communications Committee, whose input has been totally helpful to our progress. It wasn't the full working site, but it showed the actual design, layout, and the functionality. So needless to say, we were very pleased with the committee's response. We were excited to share it with you today in person. Alas, our little outbreak has prevented that. However, the good news is that we will be presenting it at a special in-person event later in March, right before the site launches shortly thereafter. We'd love to have you attend, so stay tuned for more information coming soon. Thank you, and next up is IT Director Brian Levitt.
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about Wi-Fi and just a little bit about our system, go over some of the stats, talk about sometimes when people have some problems, and then some of the things we're looking to do with it. So if we can move to the next slide. So the overview, again, we'll just go over the network, look at some stats, look at some of the ways things work together, talk about some communication issues that happen between devices and the network, maybe when some evil poltergeist kind of get in the way, and then some things that make Wi-Fi a little bit better. Next slide, please. So our network. One, make sure people have a good understanding of what we have here. So we have a network that uses enterprise-grade equipment. And what do I mean by that? Well, enterprise-grade equipment means it's what you're going to find at very large companies, at very professional organizations, at hotels, at conference centers. We use equipment from a company called Cisco Systems. They are the largest provider of network equipment. It is really top-notch stuff that provides a really good service. We have sophisticated management and monitoring tools for making sure that everything is healthy, that things are working fine, that when something isn't, we're alerted and can deal with it, and can really have a good level of insight into what is happening in our network. The network itself provides a high-quality signal all over our campus, from the garages down on the lowest levels of B5, B4, all the way up to the Sky Lounge. We have coverage that is capable of handling a voice phone call, which is the industry standard for making sure you have a good signal. We provide secure private networks for each apartment. So we use a system called Splash Access that, when you register your device, gives your device access to its own private network. We're actually looking at some new things to come up with this. So maybe later this year, we might be making some improvements in this area to simplify how people connect to the network. And then the other thing I want to point out is that we have a highly fault-tolerant network. So we use a lot of redundancy in the network. So we have two separate internet connections, for example. One goes over a microwave and it points up onto Capitol Hill to another facility that we beam a signal back and forth for our internet connection. The other one runs through our fiber. So it runs through the streets here and gets to us and delivers an internet connection that way. So if one goes down, we fell over to the other. Likewise, the security devices on the end of our network called firewalls, we have two of those. So if one fails, the other one goes over. And then all the switches in the core of our network, the thing that keeps everything running, are also redundant. So if one fails, the other goes over. So we've really designed the network to make sure it's going to be providing a good signal and that it's very reliable, that it's up and running. Next slide, please. Wanted to talk about a couple stats related to this too. Every day we have on average 2,431 clients connected to our network. That's computers, mobile phones, tablets, smart TVs, everything. That's a lot of stuff connected. And each one of those devices passes about 290 gigabytes of traffic. So that's enough to stream several movies a day per device. The number of access points throughout the community, those are the devices that broadcast the signal. We have 348 of those. Each of those devices is capable of handling 100 different connections simultaneously. The average number of clients on each of our APs is 3. So we have a lot of capacity to be able to accommodate people's needs and devices as devices grow. What we've found is that as more people are moving into the community, they're bringing more and more devices with them. When people used to have 1 or 2, now they're coming in with 15 or 20. So there's a lot of room to make sure that we can support the needs for the devices. And then our monitoring system lets us know about the health of the signal that people are experiencing. And there are 3 different ways that we look at it. The first one's called latency. And latency is the amount of time it takes for the data you send out to reach its destination and send information back. And that's 5 milliseconds is what we read. And the standard for that is 60. So we're well below the place where there would be a problem. The next standard is called packet loss. And that's when you're sending data out to its destination and back. You're trying to stream your Netflix movie. Sometimes some of the packets don't make it back. And we average about 2% packet loss. The expected value is between 3 and 5%. So again, we were under what the standard would be for this. And then the third area that we look at is called signal quality. And we measure what's called signal to noise ratio. So not to be too complicated, but basically it's how well does our signal rise above all the interference and other noise in the neighborhood that is happening around it. So we have a signal quality of 40 decibels, and the higher the number, the better. The minimum for a good signal is 27. And so this is the average that most of the clients or most of the devices connected to our network experience. So generally, we have a very healthy network that performs well. Next slide. So the network might be performing well, but that doesn't mean people don't experience problems. And we always like to point out, it does take 2 to tango. The signal is being put out, but the device that received the signal has to have good capabilities to deal with the signal. So I wanted to talk about 2 different things here. The first are the common problems that get reported to us that are things that can be fixed quickly, but these are the things we hear the most about people having problems. And the second is a little bit more complicated, and it's about the interference. And these are things in the environment that interfere with your ability to get good Wi-Fi or enjoy the Wi-Fi signal. Next slide, please. So the most common issues that we get reported are really communication issues. So it reminded me of Cool Hand Luke and the speech from the guy in the prison. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And these communication failures really boil down to 2 things. We get a lot of calls from people who suddenly lose a connection, and it's very distressing. But it's usually on one device and the rest of the devices work. What we find there is that a lot of devices, it's really easy to turn on what's called airplane mode, which turns off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and anything else that makes your device communicate. So the simple solution is to notice when that happens and turn it back on and turn airplane mode off so you can start receiving again. The other problem that we get reported a lot is if you're on an Apple device, it's called private address. And if you're on an Android device or a Windows device, it's called randomized MAC. MAC is just a word for another term for address. So every computer has what's called a hardware address, and that's how the network recognizes it and knows where to send data. So what happens with a private address or a randomized address, it's kind of like putting your device into the witness protection program. Suddenly, instead of having its own name out there or its own address out there, it's generating something random just for that one time. And while this might work great if you're in the airport connecting to public Wi-Fi there, it breaks our system here because every device has to be registered. So when you have the private address feature turned on, it makes every time you connect to the network, it looks like a new device, and Splash Access doesn't know who you are, so it doesn't allow you to connect. So we've worked with people a lot of times to turn off these features, but what happens frequently is that when an update is pushed out to your iPhone or to your Android phone, after it reboots, this turns back on. So it's one of the things to get used to looking for if suddenly things were working and it's not after an update. This is typically what we're seeing is the problem. So those are basically the communication errors. Next slide, please. So the other more complicated thing that happens is interference. If you remember from having an old AM radio, the static that would happen from someone running a blender. I remember when I was a kid, when my dad would turn on his electric razor, it would cause static on the TV screen, our old TV screen. A lot of things in our environment cause interference. So there's what's ambient interference. It's stuff that we really can't control. It's the environment around us. Microwave ovens generate interference that will interfere with Wi-Fi. Electric motors will generate signal. Cordless phones sometimes work on the same Wi-Fi spectrum or the same radio spectrum that our computers are trying to use. And so they're all fighting for that one space there. And then the other type of interference are competing Wi-Fi signals. So sometimes, depending where you are on campus, you could get or see a signal that's coming out of like the Cielo or from Virginia Mason or the Electra. All those folks have their own Wi-Fi in their buildings, and sometimes they just spill out into our building. Other devices that are around, a lot of printers run something called Wi-Fi Direct, which means they're running their own Wi-Fi network that's competing and taking up space in our Wi-Fi spectrum. And then sometimes streaming devices, when they're new, will run their own Wi-Fi network when they're in setup mode, and that will cause some interference in the area. The biggest source of Wi-Fi, though, in our environment, is probably your neighbors who have Comcast or Xfinity signals. These are usually very loud signals in our area, and they tend to use up all the available bandwidth that your device could connect to. So it's sometimes very hard to tune around those. So we've been looking at certain things to make that better. One of them next slide, is called Wi-Fi 6. So Wi-Fi 6 is a capability of our network, and one of the main things we bought when we bought our network. It's the latest standard in Wi-Fi, and it's designed to help have a good signal when you're in a really dense environment like ours, where there can be a lot of interference. In the past, Wi-Fi was just kind of a thing that broadcast out and devices would try to pick up signals. But with Wi-Fi 6, what happens is both the device and the access points that's broadcasting the signal work together to maintain a connection and kind of battle the interference. So once they're working and connected, they will keep and maintain their signal reliably. There are some external adapters available for older PCs, so ones that can't communicate on this, that have been very effective in our environment. We've actually purchased a couple we use to let people test to see if they're having interference problems, if the Wi-Fi 6 adapter would help. And a lot of the folks that have purchased these have had a much, much better experience after they've tested. So if you are having an interference problem and want to try one of these adapters on your device, give 2703 a call and we can get one set up for you and attached to your Splash Access account. And you can give it a try for a week and see if it works. And then we'll provide you the details on what we recommend for that. Unfortunately, most of these only seem to work with PCs. For some reason, the Apple devices don't produce the right software to work with a lot of these devices. So a lot of older Apple devices are kind of stuck in the Wi-Fi 5 and 4 range there. The other thing I did want to mention, so if you're looking for a new device, one of the things to look for is the term Wi-Fi 6, or sometimes you'll see it 802.11ax. But Wi-Fi 6 is the brand you'll see on there, the little logo. It's going to give you the best experience when you have a device. Most new devices will have this if it's a good quality computer. The things where you find these lacking are things like printers, picture frames. A lot of smart TVs don't have this yet. Things that are using more inexpensive networking components, this is harder to find. But when you're looking for a computer, a phone, or a tablet, these are really important features to look for there. So, and that's what I have. So I'd like to turn over to Charlene, who will talk to us about philanthropy.
Hi, good morning. From Philanthropy, I wanted to, on the next slide, please. The Partners in Caring kickoff has been rescheduled to Wednesday, March 15th. We were going to have it on the 2nd, but gives us a little more time to prepare. So come on down to Anderson Hall on the 15th to learn more about our programs that the endowment earnings help to fund. And that is residence assistance, staff scholarships, and enrichment grants. And segueing into that on the next slide is the grant deadlines. We have 2 each year, and the spring one is coming up March 13th. So get those ideas a brewing, and let's see, on the 7th of March, there'll be a workshop. You can come by and talk about the idea that you might have in mind, and we can let you know if that's something that looks like it's a good candidate for a grant. First step though, give Ruth Ann a call and just run it by her too before you go through all of the effort of putting the application together. Let's see. We'll have some applications available for you if you want to give us a call, and we can put one in your box, or you can swing by and get it. And then a quick heads up to the fall deadline that is in September 11th. And if you miss the spring, you have the fall to submit that application. And all of this information is also in the alert if you want to recapture some of what I've said. All right. And that's it. With that said, I'm going to turn this over to Brian Holtz. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Charlene. Looking forward to the kickoff. That's always a super fun day when you and Ruth Ann get that going. And of course, when the grants come through, all the creative ideas that staff and residents come up with for those grants are always super. So thank you. I just was going to give a couple of brief updates because they impact all of us, staff and residents. I just want to talk about elevators. As Lori mentioned in her update, we did make some modifications to the capacity. And it's tough because, as I'll talk about, we have some outages. So we do have a new vendor we're working with, Otis, and they actually spent several days doing an assessment of all of our elevators to give us a report card that we haven't received yet, but it'll help us understand what parts of the elevators need to be updated and helped with. Some of the terms that are used is called modernization. And so we will get a strategy from them once we get the full report to have a full understanding of what our plan is, short-term, long-term, to make sure that we are having elevators that are fully functional and a healthy plan for us to mitigate unexpected outages. What can happen is once we get that plan is that we would have scheduled outages. And so once we get our arms around all of that, we will be sure to have a clear communication path with staff and residents, contractors of what those impacts will be. Sean is working very closely with this new vendor and is in communications with them quite often. With that being said, as a reminder, elevator number 2 has been down, as most of us are aware, for quite some time. We are unfortunately long lead time on some very critical parts for that elevator, and we just can't safely put it back into service until we get these repairs made. So Sean did put a communication out once those parts were ordered. He will provide us an update once we have a better timeline on when the parts arrive. And then, of course, it's going to take quite some time to get those parts installed. Elevator number 3 was offline for a period of time, and we got it back in service yesterday. Some of the repairs that were done are impacting the way the doors are closing. They were this morning. There are some mechanisms within the door that were replaced, and it makes the door cycle a little bit before it fully closes. It is in service, but you may see that door cycle. Otis has been notified, and as expected, they will be coming out to continue to make adjustments on those rollers and wheels within that door. It is in service and safe. It's just the door is cycling. So on the next slide, I will talk a little bit about apartment key reminders. I had mentioned at a fireside chat quite some time ago, and that we reduced the number of apartment keys available per apartment from 10 down to 5. And so some residents may have and still have numerous keys. So within our card key system, the templates are numbered 1 through 10. So we took templates 6 through 10 and removed them from the system. So we will be updating all of the locks for apartments starting next week and the week after. And so if you carry multiple keys, what you may experience after we update your apartment door is if you're carrying a key template 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, that key won't work on your apartment door, because once we update your lock, those keys are no longer functional. If that happens for you, bring all of your keys down to the reception center so the staff can read your key to make sure that we get the appropriate functional key templates in your possession. We may have a few folks that happens to, but we want you to be aware that that change will be happening coming into March. And then as part of that also is we'll be updating the exterior doors, which I've talked about before as well, where keys will not work for us through perimeter doors after 10:30 p.m. and until 5:30 in the morning. Since we're not going through those perimeter doors, it's helpful for security to be able to keep an eye on our cameras. to secure our building. So use the main entrances, or if you're driving, of course, use the same steps that you're using now if you're coming late at night into early morning. Next slide, I was going to close with just talking a little bit about, of course, we wish we could be in the Anderson Hall today. And we have that open, and we had a number of things that were to be completed associated with some of the audio portions of it and the lighting. And the event advisory committee has been really collaborating with us from the beginning of planning for that space. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank them. Pat has been the chair for that committee and is stepping aside, but there are a number of residents on that committee that have been extremely helpful for us in getting to the place we are with the lighting and the audio system that we have. And we had some recent meetings since the Anderson Hall opened, and they have been behind the scenes working with me and others on making sure that asking a lot of the tough questions and the obvious questions on where are we with some of these things to get it to the place that's going to make it so that it's fantastic in the Anderson Hall. And we have made great progress on that space. And they have just been advocates for the community to help us make sure that we have that space working at an optimum. So they've been working on new forms for when you reserve rooms with Barbara, Risa, and myself. And so I just wanted to say hats off to them for all of their hard work. And especially in the last couple of months, we've had some extended meetings where we've gone through a lot of work. So thank you to them. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mike to bring us home on the closure of the meeting today.
Great, thank you, Brian. And thanks to all of the presenters today who are trying to provide information that's going to be helpful for each resident to know what's going on around here. And hopefully we get lots of participation in the meeting here, or you'll watch it on the screen at a later time. I want to emphasize a couple of things before going into the bright spots. And one is that Beam Center. You know, I have mentioned it. You're hearing it from Lori. You're hearing it from Andrew. That we really do want to develop this Beam Center as a place where residents can be assessed for their mobility condition, and that we can offer ways in which residents can improve their mobility and ultimately their longevity and independent living. You know, programs and events are really the bailiwick of residents, but when it comes to offering helpful things that can ensure longevity, we play a role in that. And we take this Beam Center really seriously, and we want to grow it and develop it. And we really want to be recognized in our senior living community at large as being a go-to place that takes on these kinds of issues to help residents. The second thing I want to emphasize is Brian Levitt's conversation about the IT. You know, I've had some people say to me, "Oh, our IT is just horrible here." It's not horrible. It's top-notch equipment. It is the right equipment, but it is also very complicated, as Brian Levitt, you know, clearly outlined for us. There are going to be issues and challenges that we face, and we take it seriously, and we want to work through it. One of the challenges that all communities have, and that is how to deal with the increasing need for IT and audiovisual help for residents. It's incredibly time-consuming, it's incredibly complex, and the technology changes a lot. We are going to be investigating ways in which we might be able to do this differently in a more broad way than just offering help from Peel Tech, but it's complicated. And we have found that you know, to staff for that is an insatiable need, because oftentimes a residence will have such a complex problem that it can consume a tech all day just trying to resolve it. I reached out to Sarah, our former CEO, and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing in your 5 communities in San Francisco?" And she says, "Well, we don't offer any help at all up until just recently when we started offering Peel Tech." This is a common theme among communities, is they don't have really good answers because it's a challenging one to solve, but it doesn't mean we're not going to try to make an effort at it. And as Brian Levitt was also saying, it's a two-way street. We need your help to make sure that you have the most current equipment and or adapters to be able to get and utilize the signal that we can produce. So it is a tango between the two of us. And the last thing I want to emphasize here is Brian Holtz's comments about the elevators. You know, I liken this a little bit to like when the warranty on your car goes out and all of a sudden all sorts of issues come up. The last 18 months has been just horrific on elevators. And it's not because we don't care about the elevators or we didn't have the right people, although we've made changes there. The reality is that we're in a major upgrade modernization cycle for our elevators that has now just, you know, literally been foisted upon us. We are going to try to manage that in a sensible way so elevators are not down any more than they absolutely need to be. But obviously, we have lots of upgrading to do. And some of these elevators are old enough that they don't take the new updates. So we have to figure out how can we modernize them to the best of our ability. We take this seriously. We know how important those elevators are to everyone. Obviously, it's compromised by COVID and the restrictions on how many people can be in the elevators. But nonetheless, we are committed to getting these elevators working properly and regularly. So the point being that we're not taking our eye off that ball. Okay, on to a few bright spots. The assisted living elder grow program and baby doll therapy has been a bright spot in assisted living. As people age, and in a lot of cases when people are facing memory issues, having, you know, the baby doll therapy might not sound like a sophisticated thing for those of us that are not in a situation where we need that kind of comfort. But it does make a big difference to those residents who are agitated through the cause of memory loss. And we want to make sure that we're always providing the programs that allow people to age through their condition as safely and constructively as possible. And we think the Elder Grow program and baby doll therapy is one of those bright spots. Another bright spot is many of you went to the Seattle Convention Center opening several weeks ago, and I was just blown away. I mean, it was like walking into an airport or an airplane hangar. It is so large. I thought it was nicely done. It was done in a very Seattle style type way. And our collective hope is that this will draw conventions to Seattle and help Seattle regain its former personality and its former self. You know, we have struggled with downtown office space being very having high low occupancy, and of course that means that there are more transients on the street. We're hoping that more activity in downtown Seattle through the convention center will help make Seattle more vibrant, and we'll all be better off for it. On a personal note, many of you have been grandparents for some time. Chris and I just became grandparents, and here's a picture of our daughter-in-law with our grandson, Leif. We think he's a pretty good Viking. We'll make sure that he gets proper Viking training over the years. And of course, we think our grandkid is the cutest grandkid ever, but hopefully that's what everybody says about their grandkid. It's exciting for us. And of course, you know, as I reach the end of my time here at Horizon House, a big part of our future is going to be involved with that family and helping to be a part of our grandson's life. Now I'd like to shift to any questions that might have come through to Beth and or in any other way, maybe Teresa. So what do we have here? Anything?
This is Beth. I have not received any emails with questions.
Okay. All right. Well, as we say every time, you are welcome to speak with me directly, with Lori, with Christy, with anything that you might have that you don't feel was sufficiently answered. We want to make ourselves available. Our next Fireside Chat is going to be March 31st at 10 a.m. And we sure as heck hope that's going to be an in-person one back at Anderson Hall, where we all would rather be and experiencing each other's company. Thank you for participating, and I hope that this has been informative, and I hope that there is appreciation for the staff that are really working on behalf of residents. Yes, there are lots of things that don't work perfectly, but you have a very committed staff in every single area that is doing their best to try to make life here good for every resident. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon.